Welcome to Hopeful Moments 1, where we explore everyday stories that carry profound life lessons. Today, we're diving into a dramatic family conflict. A bride-to-be, an excited younger sister ready to be a bridesmaid, and then, an unexpected demand changes everything. The older sister not only suggests but nearly forces her younger sibling to lose weight, all in the name of maintaining a perfect wedding image. But the real controversy lies in how the sister justifies her actions. Instead of acknowledging her insensitivity or showing understanding, she claims she's simply trying to motivate her sibling to change. A coercive act is disguised as help, putting the younger sister in an impossible situation. What do you think about this? Is this genuine concern, or is it just a manipulative tactic? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you find this story intriguing and thought-provoking, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. When I was a child, I was enchanted by grand, fairy tale weddings. I imagined a radiant bride in a flowing white gown, walking hand in hand with her groom amidst a sea of fresh flowers and twinkling lights. In a child's eyes, weddings were the embodiment of eternal love, perfect happiness, and magical moments. I believed that as long as two people loved each other, their wedding day would be flawless and beautiful. But then I grew up, and those dreams slowly crumbled under the weight of reality. Weddings, I realized, were not just joyful celebrations of love, they were complex puzzles filled with pressure and expectations. They were no longer fairy tales but meticulously orchestrated performances where the bride, groom, and everyone around them got caught up in society's rigid standards. People spend months, even years, preparing for a single day, a day where every detail must be perfect. The wedding dress must be so stunning that no one can criticize it. Bridesmaids must have the ideal figure to look good in photos. The guest list must be carefully curated to avoid offending anyone. Even seemingly trivial things, like seating arrangements, can spark heated debates. And the saddest part? When the focus is solely on crafting a flawless image, the true meaning of a wedding gets lost. Love, connection, and genuine joy become overshadowed by the pressure to meet expectations. From my experience, extravagant weddings often feel like expensive drama factories, where instead of basking in happiness, people drown in stress, arguments, and unrealistic demands. It makes me wonder, are we sacrificing too much just to have a wedding that looks good to others, rather than one that truly feels joyful? My sister, Simon, female, 29, is eagerly preparing for her wedding with her fiancé, Steve, male, 32. The big day is set for May 2025, and for months now, she has poured all her energy into making it perfect. Endless calls with caterers and photographers, wedding dress fittings, choosing flowers, sending invitations, she's constantly busy, filled with excitement, and sometimes a little stressed. But no matter how overwhelmed she gets, her eyes still sparkle with the joy of someone about to start a new chapter in life. Watching her dive headfirst into wedding planning, I couldn't help but feel excited for her. I adore my sister, though we don't always see eye to eye. I've always admired her decisiveness and strength. Growing up, she was my guide, the role model I looked up to. So when I found out she was getting married, I felt emotional. I wanted nothing more than to be by her side on her big day, contributing in any small way to make it even more special. But amid all the excitement, I never expected that this wedding would become a turning point in our relationship. A seemingly simple conversation changed everything. Last Friday evening, on a calm and pleasant night, Simon unexpectedly invited me to our favorite cafe. When I arrived, I saw her sitting by the window, gently stirring her cappuccino, eyes gleaming with excitement. We had always shared heart-to-heart talks in this very place, but I had no idea that tonight would mark an unforgettable moment in our relationship. As soon as I sat down, Simon reached for my hand, her expression full of anticipation. "Do you want to be my bridesmaid?" she asked, her voice brimming with excitement. My heart swelled with happiness. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. All my life, I had adored my sister, and now I had the chance to stand by her on the most important day of her life, a role I had always dreamed of. I smiled, already picturing myself in a sleek bridesmaid dress, holding her hand as she walked down the aisle. I could see it all so clearly, the golden lights twinkling, the soft music playing, the white flowers adorning the venue. I thought this would be a perfect, beautiful moment we would cherish forever. But that joy lasted only a moment. Less than a minute later, our conversation took an unexpected turn. My smile faded as Simon spoke again, and I realized that her request wasn't just an invitation to share her happiness, it came with a condition. The light-hearted atmosphere between us started to shift. Simon's smile dimmed slightly, replaced by a thoughtful expression I couldn't quite read. I sensed something was off, but before I could dwell on it, she suddenly spoke. "How much do you weigh?" I froze. It felt like someone had poured ice-cold water over our warm conversation. For a second, I thought I misheard her. A question completely unrelated to being a bridesmaid or the wedding had just surfaced, out of nowhere. I furrowed my brows, confused. "What?" I asked, hoping I had misunderstood. Simon didn't respond immediately. She simply tilted her head slightly, her gaze steady, as if waiting for a number. Not wanting to make things awkward, I answered truthfully. 159 pounds, around 72 kilograms. The moment those words left my mouth, I felt like I had done something wrong. Like I had triggered a reaction I wasn't prepared to deal with. I waited for a response, but deep down, I had a sinking feeling that whatever came next would not be pleasant. I had never considered myself skinny, but I had also never thought my weight was a topic worth discussing. I wasn't particularly petite, but I wasn't out of control either. At 5 feet 6 inches, 167 centimeters, I had always believed I had an average build, nothing remarkable enough for anyone to care about. Yet, as soon as I said that number, I saw a subtle shift in Simon's expression. A tiny change, but enough for me to notice. Her eyes flickered with a hint of calculation, as if the number I just revealed held more significance than I realized. Something in that moment felt unsettling, like I had unknowingly stepped into a conversation I wasn't prepared for. I held my breath, waiting for what she would say next. My heart pounded, not out of excitement, but because I had a vague, uneasy feeling that this conversation was about to take a turn I wouldn't like. And then, what she said next left me completely speechless. My sister stared at me for a moment, her gaze unwavering, before casually saying something that stunned me. "You should lose weight down to around 130 pounds, 59 kilograms, so you won't look chubby in the wedding photos and videos." Time seemed to slow down. I blinked, trying to process her words, but my brain felt frozen. A part of me wanted to believe I had misheard her, but no, I hadn't. She had actually said that, and without even a hint of hesitation. I have never been overly confident about my appearance. There have been days when I looked in the mirror and felt dissatisfied, moments when I compared myself to others and wished I looked a little different. But never did I think that the very person I loved and trusted, my own sister, would be the one to push me into the depths of insecurity like this. I had imagined an entirely different moment, her excitement when I agreed to be her bridesmaid, maybe a warm hug, or at the very least, a light-hearted conversation about the wedding plans. But all I got in return was cold judgment. No gratitude, no happiness, just a casual remark that reduced my worth to a number on a scale. A heavy weight settled in my chest. In the cozy cafe, surrounded by the chatter and laughter of others, all I could feel was an overwhelming emptiness. I had never thought of myself as overweight. I knew I wasn't thin, but I never considered it something to be ashamed of. Yet the moment she said those words, a frightening thought crept into my mind. Was I really so bad that I would ruin her wedding's image? Had people secretly thought this about me all along, and I had just never realized it? I started questioning myself, and every word she spoke felt like a blade cutting into me, making me ashamed of my own body. But the most painful part wasn't the number 130 pounds, it was her attitude. She said it so casually, as if it were an undeniable fact I should simply accept. No hesitation, no sensitivity, no empathy. This wasn't the sister I knew, the one who was kind and never cared much about appearances. Yet now, she was looking at me as if I were a flaw in the perfect wedding picture she wanted to create. As if I wasn't good enough to be part of her special day unless I changed. Disappointment flooded through me. I had expected a warm conversation, a joyful moment, a simple happiness in being her bridesmaid. But instead, I was met with judgment and criticism. I was no longer her little sister, I was just a number on a scale, a problem to be fixed. And at that moment, a sad realization hit me: extravagant weddings can turn even the kindest people into strangers. I saw a flicker of surprise in her eyes, but it quickly vanished, replaced by a sharp, almost irritated expression. "Why?" she asked, her tone no longer gentle but colder now. I clenched my hands under the table, trying to stay calm. The hurt still sat heavy inside me, but I knew I had to say it. I couldn't force myself to take part in something that made me feel so uncomfortable from the very start. "Because you didn't treat me kindly," I said, my voice quiet but firm. I looked directly at her, hoping she would understand how much her words had hurt me. She raised an eyebrow, then let out a short, dismissive laugh. "Really? You're overreacting. I'm just trying to help you. If you lose weight, won't you feel better too?" I felt my heart tighten. "No, you're not helping me. You're just making me feel like I'm not good enough." This time, my voice didn't waver. I realized I didn't need to apologize for feeling hurt. Her expression hardened, irritation flashing across her face. "You're being a spoiled child," she said, her tone laced with judgment. At that moment, I knew this conversation was pointless. I stood up, my chest feeling tight, as if I couldn't breathe properly. I didn't want to stay here any longer. I didn't want to continue this conversation. "I'm leaving," I said shortly, then walked out of the cafe. My footsteps echoed on the pavement, blending with the sounds of the city at night. I didn't know whether to feel sad or angry. All I knew was that, for the first time in my life, I felt farther away from my sister than ever before. I took a deep breath, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. Every word she said had cut into me like a sharp blade, cold, indifferent, and full of judgment. "Over something so small?" I repeated, my voice shaking slightly. "To you, this might not be important, but to me, it is. I don't think being judged by my own sister for my appearance is a small thing." She crossed her arms, looking at me with growing impatience. "Do you really think I'm trying to hurt you? I just want you to look better. Do you know how you'll feel when you look back at the wedding photos and see yourself, not looking your best?" I let out a laugh, but not because I found anything funny. It was a bitter, disappointed laugh. "Oh, so the issue isn't how I feel, but that you're afraid I'll ruin your wedding photos, right?" She was silent for a moment, then let out a sharp sigh. "I don't have time for this. If you don't want to be a bridesmaid, fine, but don't blow things out of proportion. I have way too much to deal with for the wedding." I nodded, feeling empty inside. Maybe I had expected a different conversation, a simple apology, a bit of understanding, or at least some respect for my feelings. But in the end, all I got was indifference. "All right," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I don't want to be your bridesmaid anymore. Let's pretend this conversation never happened." I stood up, my steps feeling heavy. As I walked away, I didn't look back. Not because I was angry, but because I knew that if I did, I would only see the cold, invisible distance between us, one that might never be bridged again. Instead of receiving unconditional support from the family, Simon was met with the exact opposite reaction. My mother, who had always loved and protected her children, immediately expressed her disappointment. "Simon, did you really ask your sister to lose weight just to fit into your wedding?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm enough to shift the atmosphere. My father, a man who rarely involved himself in our personal matters, didn't bother hiding his disapproval either. "I can't believe you're making such a big deal out of this that you're actually hurting your sister." My younger brother, Luke, was the bluntest of all. "Are you serious? You're pressuring her to change her appearance just for some wedding photos? Do you even hear how ridiculous that sounds?" But perhaps the biggest shock for Simon came from Steve, her fiancé. He was silent for a long time, as if carefully choosing his words. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but firm. "Simon, I love you, but I'm really disappointed right now. A wedding is supposed to be a happy occasion, not a day to impose beauty standards on others, especially your own sister." Simon froze. Maybe she had believed that the family would take her side, that they would support her view, or at the very least, remain neutral. But the reality was the complete opposite. One by one, they voiced their disapproval of her actions. Her hands clenched into fists, and her face turned red with embarrassment and frustration. "You don't understand. I was just trying to help her. She doesn't see that she has a problem, but she does. I just wanted to give her some motivation to change." My mother shook her head. "No, Simon. If you truly wanted to help her, you would support and love her, not make her feel worse about herself. Pressure is never real motivation." I remained silent, watching everything unfold, feeling both relieved and heartbroken. Relieved because I wasn't alone in this, because my family still stood on the right side. But heartbroken because I realized that between me and Simon, an irreparable crack had formed. Simon began to cry, but I knew those weren't tears of regret. They were tears of frustration that no one was siding with her, that for the first time, she couldn't twist the narrative in her favor. And suddenly, I understood, maybe the sister I once loved wasn't the same person anymore. Her family's words cut through Simon like a knife. She looked around, as if searching for an ally. Her expression flickered with disbelief before settling into anger. "You all don't understand," she raised her voice, her eyes darting between everyone. "I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted her to look better, to feel more confident. What did I do wrong?" But no one answered. My mother folded her arms, her gaze gentle yet unwavering. "You're not helping her, Simon. You're making her feel bad about herself. That is not love." My father shook his head slowly. "Your happiness shouldn't come at the cost of someone else's insecurity, especially not your own sister's." Luke crossed his arms and sighed. "Do you even realize how she felt when you said those things? You weren't worried about her feelings, you were worried about your wedding photos." Steve, who had been silent for a while, finally spoke. His voice was steady, but there was no mistaking the disappointment in it. "I don't know how much pressure you're feeling about this wedding, but if you're willing to hurt people just to make it perfect, then maybe you're focusing on the wrong thing.